Hello, everybody. Welcome to our 19th episode of Unfiltered Race Fans Only podcast. We've got myself, Blake, Chris, and Kevin for this week's episode. We're going to break down the uh, race that we just had at somewhere doing something. I can't remember for the life of me because we're all tired. Uh, where did we just race? I can't remember.
Darlington,
That's right, Darlington. Oh, yes. All right. So we're going to break down
last
Darlington. We're going to break
weekend.
down some of the news about the sale of RWR Racing's charter or not sale in opposition to it. Uh, Unfortunately, even though you're probably all tired of hearing about tariffs, we're going to have to talk about it just a little bit more since they went into effect last night and went to 104%. And then uh, at Bristol this weekend, they're going to be spraying some PJ1. So we got a lot to talk about. So we'll start with the racing from this weekend. And so first, we had just the Xfinity and the Cup race this weekend. Um, I thought the racing in the Xfinity was pretty good. Impressed with Brandon Jones, not who I expected to win, even though he's proven to be good there in the past. Just I would have expected one of the Cup regulars, usually like how Denny goes down there and schools them or whatever, to kind of take the lead. But I was impressed, considering Brandon Jones just got out of JRM equipment and couldn't find victory lane. Once he got back in JGR equipment, he did. So, what'd you guys think of the Xfinity race first and foremost?
Honestly, from my opinion, I think the way the new car is compared to what these guys are driving in the Xfinity series, the fact that these guys aren't going down and dominating these races shows why there's a better transition from guys coming from truck straight to cup than going through fucking Xfinity.
I think that's a good point.
All these guys are trying to learn how to adjust their driving style to figure out how to drive these cars, and it shows that the way they used to drive, they can't do that anymore either because they're not going down and dominating in those cars like they used to.
Yeah, definitely.
Larson didn't seem to have any trouble at Homestead.
Well,
Just
I
Well,
saying.
mean,
that
they said that Seabell's interview, you could watch Seabell's interview, and they asked him, flat out, what can you take from here till tomorrow? And he said, absolutely nothing. I
Absolutely
mean,
not.
like,
Yeah. No, I
so
agree that there's less translation, and it's been discussed several times by multiple people. There's definitely less translation from the middle tier series, which used to be like Cup Light, is now kind of on an island all its own.
So I was on the beach when this race was going on. I only got to see like the very end. What happened between Ross Chastain and Seabell?
basically the same thing that happened between Ryan Blaney and Tyler Reddick.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
yeah,
mean that's the easiest explanation.
Ross didn't leave him room,
Yep.
but
That's
Just Ross being
shocking to me.
Ross, Ross uh doing Ross things. Um Dale Jr. said that, it's different. Obviously when he was racing against Ross, it would drive him up a wall. He said,
uh,
now that I got him in my car, he's like, let's go
I
have some
love
fun.
it.
Like
Yeah.
this guy's like the Ryan Newman today, like the hardest guy, but he has set the tone that um you he basically changed the mentality throughout the garage. Whatever Ryan Newman didn't finish, Ross definitely picked up that ball of positions are so hard to come by that if I just hold you up, then eventually the tires equalize and you're not going to get around me. Um, the one thing I found interesting on the weekend, Carl Edwards, I guess, went over to Rick Ware slash RFK when he was working with Corey to get prepped for this upcoming prime transition for the broadcast that's going to happen here after I think it's Hook 600 when we switch to prime and TNT. And uh, Corey said Carl got in his car, and one of the things that Carl said he would do immediately was rip out that rear view camera. Which I mean, I
Yeah.
think when you look at it, I think it's a valid point. You look at everything is so close together. So you've shown every driver how the other one drives. So now they all drive the same. You gave them rear view cameras, so it's easier to aero block. You made all the cars the same. Like it's almost impossible to differentiate. So then you wonder why there's no passing and you have to manufacture cautions. You have to manufacture special tires because you keep stacking all the stuff that feeds the problem you're trying to stop. So,
Mhm.
you're never going to get back to the passing. And I get the whole, well, we can't unlearn. No, you don't have to unlearn. But if I take away the tool, there's no fucking camera. So it puts all the emphasis back on the spotter and on the driver, and they have to really
You
think,
don't have to unlearn it. It's just gone.
yep. So do
Well,
I really want to make
that's
that?
been my
Yeah.
that's been my whole argument the whole damn time. Just well, you can't unlearn it. It doesn't mean you have to fucking unlearn it. Just quit using it.
Yep. Take it
You
out.
don't have to. You don't have to use this aero package. You don't have to create all the fucking downforce in the cars. You don't have to have all the electronics be in the fucking rear view mirror and all that bullshit. Just because you know you don't have to unlearn it. Just don't fucking use it.
Yep.
I mean, there's a reason why the local tracks, any fucking local track, they have a radio that you can hear the officials, but you cannot have any fucking radio system in those fucking cars to talk to anybody on your crew at a local racetrack. At least not any of the ones I've ever been around.
Nope.
And I've been around a lot of
Yeah.
local racetracks.
There's no spotters. It's just you and your best guess. Like you hope you don't, when you make that slide, that you don't hit the other guy and go barrel rolling out of the fucking park.
I mean, I get why they have to have the spotters in these series. They're running way too fast. The tracks are way too big. You do need a spotter, but you don't need all the other bullshit to go with it. You don't need the just give them their spot mirrors back.
Yep. Well, they
Give them the
have
spot
them,
mirrors.
I think. I don't remember if they ever clarified it, but I believe that the camera was put in there because of the way the driver sits in this new car and the way you're positioned within it and the lack of ability to see inside that greenhouse.
Oh, fucking well.
Gee, I think I remember them having. Oh, they're called spotters.
Yep.
Yeah, that my point. Who cares?
Maybe don't design a car that has a bad greenhouse.
Yep.
Maybe.
What you
I
got,
don't know.
Kevin?
Just talking about the local stuff. Like my dad, when they raced for a couple years, they tried that. They had the headsets. He had a earpiece in his helmet, and he had a guy talking to him. For 2 years, they tried that, and it caused more wrecks than anything. Like it was a total disaster on a dirt track, and they ended up getting rid of it. Like there was a certain series they were running, and they allowed them to have radios, and it was an absolute nightmare. So I mean, I get exactly what Chris is saying. I mean, they went back to the old ways because it didn't make for good racing. So,
Yeah.
I do have one thing to fucking add.
Yeah.
Am I the only one that got the fucking assignment this week?
For the
Yes.
throwback shirt.
It's a fucking throwback weekend. What the fuck
Dilly
are
dilly?
you guys doing?
Some of us are trying to go to bed, Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
I don't have any NASCAR shirts. Sorry. I can go get my Kyle Busch hat over there or something from Caramel. That's as far back
That'll
as I
work.
can go.
I mean, I even went with the hat too. So,
But
damn it, man.
so anything else about the Xfinity race? I didn't find, it wasn't too eventful overall. The only real eventful thing leading into the weekend with the Xfinity race was obviously the NASCAR's power move, making all the drivers come in super early so they
Yep.
could basically tell them if you do that shit again, you're in big trouble.
And I can't remember who said it, but they need to do it again before they go back there in the fall.
Yep.
And just to remind them,
Dale Jr.
hey,
and Jordan Bianchi both said it. Yeah, and I agree because I think between now and then they'll forget. So they definitely need to revisit it again. I think that's the first time I've seen NASCAR do anything in the last 5 or 6 years that resembled the old Bill France Jr. days of, let me remind you who's in charge of this shit, and it's not you, and that you can be gone in a moment's notice. Because in order, something I didn't think about, but they've talked about on Dale Jr.'s thing was the fact that in order for them to be there at the 8 a.m. meeting, well, those guys had to get up at 4 a.m. to get down there. So that's a total power move of like, don't forget where your bread's buttered, basically. So,
They should have used the Japanese inspection.
yep. So they got that. Now, I also
Yeah,
thought,
you're not wrong.
yep, I thought the comments by Dale Jr., I saw the tweet about it, but it is hilarious where Austin Hill was like, they can come talk to me and look at me as a mentor. Dude, you're one of the biggest clowns at wrecking people and pushing through people to get to the front. You're the reason, a big part of the reason why we had that wreck. Sammy Smith is the first part, but you finished it. Like you drove Allgaier into his teammate. He didn't drive there all on his own. And you've driven through plenty of people. So you probably shouldn't raise your hand right now and be like, I'm the mentor. Everybody follow me.
Yeah, I heard they made that comment that him and Allgaier were the ones that were kind of chosen to
Well, yeah,
to be
yeah,
the mentor.
yeah. Austin was chosen, and which is kind of hilarious on its
Yeah.
own right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's really there. Other than that, there really wasn't much to the Xfinity. I will say the Xfinity guys, by a large margin, executed the assignment this weekend for throwbacks way better than the Cup guys did.
Yep.
I think part
That
of it is
28
number
car was
placement.
freaking amazing.
Yeah, the 28, the 4, just there were a lot of really good cars
44.
this weekend. Yeah,
And and I gotta say to the drivers, to the news outlets, any team owner that we don't want to do it because it's boring or it's getting old. Well, just look at the stands, look at the crowd, and shut your mouth and just keep doing it because we love it, we enjoy it. Stop trying to take something away that the fans enjoy.
yep,
Just because your name's Chase Elliott and you're a sourpuss and you don't care about it, the history of the sport, because you don't care about your fans or whatever.
yep.
William Byron, oh, it's overdone. Shut up.
You can get out of the 24 car anytime, buddy, or the 9. Go drive for a number with no history,
One
and
one of those drivers just moved into a big old mansion. They need to remember why they're able to do that.
yeah,
I mean, it pisses me off with like Kyle. He hasn't ran one yet since he's been at RCR. He
no,
I
used to
think
have the best ones, when he was
they
in the 18, with Mars and, the Snickers and the Skittles and all that. And yeah, they don't even do it. They don't even participate. So,
and they
well,
referenced why they understand why some teams can't because of the fact that some of these sponsors are only two three race sponsors and they're not going to give up their look to throw back to something that has nothing to do with them. So I get that, but as a team owner, when you're looking at sponsors, throwback weekend, like let's see if we can find a sponsor that will let us throw back to something.
yep. I Well, I said it last week, and I still stand by it. Like, I'm glad the teams that participated did. I wish, we were joking, but I mean, I do wish that they would keep it in-house. That teams like the Wood Brothers or Penske, or even Bell this weekend, like when you're throwing back to something, yeah, it has personal meaning to you. But we have 77 years of racing history for this series and 3 series from which to choose from. Can we stop doing the same tired Dale Sr., Jeff Gordon schemes and spread it out to the field? It took all of these people to make the sport what it is, not just 5 or 6 people. And I feel like more often than not, we focus the throwbacks on maybe 10 or 15 people out of that 77 years. The Cale Yarboroughs, the Pearsons, the like Harry Gantz, and yet they're all equally important. Nobody's going to throw back to Michael Waltrip. You don't think there's safety innovations after he just shredded that car at Bristol on that tailgate, or
Mike
getting a
Harmon.
barrel roll for David Rudiman in the Aaron's car, or there's a lot
There
of
was
really good
Aaron's
schemes.
was on a car this weekend.
Yeah, you have a lot of really good schemes over the history of the series to pull from, or sponsors to, innovate that you could use. I will say that I did like what, not just because it's Larson or that it's Terry Labonte. What I liked is that Hendrick, and he has that flexibility because he's the owner of that brand, but that they took the Hendrick Cars logo which normally is very angled and stylized, and they fit it to that Kellogg's font style so that it still felt like as true to the spirit of as possible. Same thing with, was it the 44 Brennan Poole? With the
Yeah.
way he did his caricature and
The
everything,
old,
the Gordon
Yeah.
Looney Tunes. Okay, I
Yeah,
couldn't
that
use
was
the
cool.
cartoons, but I did a character of the owner, a character of the business owner, a character of myself, like, and then I had the bullseyes and everything. So you still found a way to mold it and got the color change correct and everything. You can definitely tell which teams put the effort in to execute it well and which ones are like a half-hearted attempt. And I don't think it should be forced, but I feel like if you're going to do it, you should, commit to doing it right. But
Yeah.
they did make the point they felt like they should be able to do more with it. So I would like to see them do more with the track and the heritage as a whole. So yeah,
gotta go.
go
Come
ahead.
on. Go.
They need to make Larson's
Go.
a checkers or wreckers.
Yeah. Blake will buy it.
Take it.
With that
Wreckers.
Take it.
massive
Wreckers or
Hey.
wreckers.
I got a better idea. A 4-car set.
All 4 wrecked ones
Yeah.
from the previous years. Well, she got Chris.
I think we talked about this. We touched base on this a little bit. The Raptor scheme.
Yep.
We have just seen you don't have to go and infringe on fucking what is it, the movie company that made fucking Jurassic
Universal.
Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, Universal Studios. You can still utilize the fucking scheme just like they did with Cartoon Network. They didn't have the licensing. That's why they made their own characters. And you can make that fucking T-Rex goddamn paint scheme again. Why would you not? Why would you not?
Yep.
That was one of the most iconic schemes that we ever fucking saw on a race car.
Mhm.
And they won't do it. I think and I thought it was kind of funny. I talked to Blake about it, and I hadn't listened to the Dale Jr. download yet, but I talked to Blake about some of the comments that Raja had made throughout the weekend. And then they talked about it. I mean, almost it was friggin' hilarious. I mean, the simple fact that even if you're not throwing back to, if you haven't been in the sport long enough to throw back to a certain paint scheme in the past, why would you not even utilize an old school paint scheme, which I get to an extent where you're talking about you want to keep it just dedicated to the sport, but at least if you're not going to go and dedicate it to an old paint scheme or an old driver in the past, at least do a fucking retro, something retro that looks old. Go back to when your company originally started. Throw back to yourself if you have to, but fucking do something.
Yeah, I would rather have that than nothing. My order of preference would be pick something within the 77 years. But if you couldn't, then yeah, like the year Lowe's did the throwback to their blue and white, like original logo and truck. Obviously, it didn't go back to anything related to any particular driver. It was their classic Lowe's stylized thing.
Well,
That
John
was good.
Silver's did it this year.
Yeah. I think that still works well. So
my other point on that being, back to what you said about the 77 years, there's no reason why. I mean, I can pull out, honestly, if you want to look at it, why not even utilize feeder series? Look at how many iconic paint schemes came out of the ASA series. Look how many iconic schemes used to be in the ARCA series. They don't necessarily anymore because the sponsors there change just like they do in the Cup series now.
yeah.
But all these guys, especially when they ended up in Cup, why are you not utilizing, like you said, through the 77 plus years through the motorsports? You're telling me, oh, well, no, we've already used all the paint schemes. The fuck you have. Just because they weren't a Hall of Famer, just because they weren't a champion, just because they weren't somebody that put astronomical numbers up there, guess what? They were part of the fucking sport and they should be honored too.
Yep.
You can't tell me you can't go through that fucking Hall of Fame and find a paint scheme that you can put on that car and dedicate to somebody that's made some, whether it's a giant or a small impact in this sport. You're telling me you can't fucking find somebody to honor within motorsports, especially within NASCAR?
Yep, you can't go back
sorry,
and find me a Rick Mask, a Tiny Lund, Lake Speed. Go pick somebody who didn't put up these massive numbers, like that Purelator Lake Speed number 10, for example, would be a great one.
Yeah.
Or, I know you can't do a lot with the Winston brand lookalike with like the old Jimmy Spencer cars or Camel or something, but
Somebody did
But
this
they,
weekend.
they did
Yep.
it this weekend.
Yep.
That was a
So-
badass friggin' paint scheme.
yeah, I know there's a lot of things you have to dance around with some of those, but I mean, again, or Jeff Burton and AT&T, like, there's just so many designs, schemes, sponsors out there. I just feel like for everybody to say it's tired, I feel like if you're getting tired of it, it is because you're seeing the same old stuff used over and over again. But then I blame that on the teams and the designers for the lack of creativity.
It's just lazy.
Yeah, it's just lazy. Like you said, just do retro. Even if you're not going to throw back to that 77 years. So
I have an idea though. So when you go through, and I understand you don't want to run sponsors off, but when you're talking to sponsors, shouldn't that be part of negotiations? If that sponsor says, "Hey, we want to come in on Darlington," then you can't approach them and be like, "Okay, so then where do you stand on the possibility that's going to be the throwback race?"
Yep.
Are you going to want to change your branding, or is that going to be an issue?
I feel like that draws more attention to you.
right.
I would think so.
It is a big merchandise pull. I mean,
I guarantee you, Gray Clips got more publicity this weekend with being an Office Depot scheme than they would have if they had that plain ugly white scheme they usually run.
yep. Yep, they've had some good looking ones and some bland ones, but I think definitely that got them a lot more publicity.
Yep.
It was just
Also-
missing Carl flipping off the car after Denny made the win. Like Carl had to come over there and do his backflip with his back problems, but he didn't do it, so he let us down. But
We need a new swear jar because Chris has already filled up the one we have.
that's okay.
No, well, I'm sorry, but this is one that it pisses me off. It shows. I'm sorry. It's an absolute disrespect for the sport, in my opinion. To say that this throwback weekend, after this is what, the 6th year now we've done it, 7th year.
Like the 10th year, dude.
Yeah, we're on
Well,
like
whatever.
year 10.
Well,
'Cause-
either way,
The first year is right there. Harvick number gold Budweiser door number.
okay. Well, but it still, I just it's almost more heartbreaking to sit back and think that the sport itself not shutting down this conversation, it's almost a sad representation for me on the direction that even NASCAR is trying to take this sport. NASCAR doesn't even seem to give a shit.
Yeah.
They don't. NASCAR themselves don't remember everything they used to do when this started. They would go back and you couldn't use some of the same icons because of course there's copyrights to it and owned by different TV companies and stuff like that. But just some of the stuff they used to do with the broadcast through
Well,
back
they
to
did it the first time,
Well,
wasn't it, in the fall race?
It was NBC, and NBC did a whole lot better
Yeah.
job with it.
They brought in throwback broadcasters, throwback branding, throwback race tickers. Like NBC executed it well. Fox has not done that as much.
Fox is lazy about just about
Harvick
everything.
even said during his thing that like even though it's throwback weekend, like he's not getting into the spirit, which I mean he's my guy, but he was like, I'm not dressing up for all that and putting on like, the knickerbockers or any of that kind of stuff, like all the wingtips or anything like that, not going back there. And teach their own, but I feel like it's your responsibility. This is one area where I would disagree with him, is that, and he has a lot of really, I like his openness and honesty throughout the year, but this is one area where I think he's wrong. When you signed up to be a broadcaster and you are inheriting that part of the schedule, your job is to do the best you can to sell that portion of the schedule to the fans. If you're not getting into the spirit, how can the fans or the rest of the industry, like the whole industry as a group, needs to work together? Like Roger said, the whole thing should be retro, not just the sponsors, the track, the broadcast, every bit of it. So if you're not getting into it, how do you expect everybody else to get into it? You're perpetuating the problem. So
What do we think about the race?
So yeah, let's move on to the cup race itself. So I mean, obviously, we're only 4 laps in and Larson wrecks, so we start the yet again with problems. I honestly couldn't believe he spun out down there. I just the way the car got unsettled on that bump, and they talked about it, that that whole section where the track comes up because of the paved strip and everything for the grip. I was shocked, but I believe Mr. Blake has something to say since he was there and unfortunately was robbed of a great experience. Go ahead, Blake. Tell us
Oh
what you
man.
really feel.
I gotta say, I had a whole week, I had a great weekend in Myrtle Beach, and just loved all the time I had there. And then I go to Darlington, and my girlfriend's hyped up. She's not been to a race with me yet, and I'm having to warn her, something bad happens. I don't know how I'm going to act, and so on. And she's got a scanner on. I've got the same scanner on, and he, I hear lock it down, lock it down. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, because where he spun, I couldn't see, and I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. And then I hear Cliff, bring it to us, you can. And I see it on the TV, like just totally destroyed. I'm like, I am so glad that I did not just come here, because my God, I would not. I beat it with a dead horse here that I do not like William Byron. I'm not a fan of Chase Elliott. I would not wish this on either of those fan bases. I would never want any fan base to have to go through that situation. I was 9.5 hours from home to watch 3.5 laps, and then I was miserable for 65 laps, and I'm like, I tried, I just couldn't do it. I have no other driver. I was trying to get involved. I was watching Bubba because he was coming through the field a little bit. I was watching Josh Berry, but like it was miserable, and I would not wish that on any fan base to drive however long and to see your driver wreck on lap four is just it was terrible.
So you're
But
telling me you did not enjoy the throwback experience of watching them sit in the garage for 50 or 60 laps, repair the car, and come back
50 or
out there and
60,
get
you
going?
mean
160.
100 and whatever. Either way, that was a genuine throwback experience that Larson treated you
Yeah.
to that you availed yourself of and left. You could have
Well,
stayed and watched him get one extra point and run around
actually,
there.
he didn't get an extra point.
Yeah. So yeah.
Something I didn't realize.
Oh, he did end up making the point up.
No, he did, but the last few spots are only 1 point.
Only one
Oh
point
yeah.
each, so he didn't gain anything extra out of it.
The only thing they
Well,
gained was experience of fixing a car, and they did try some new things with the car because they fixed it really good. When he came out on the track, he had fresher tires on, but he was passing people, and he was running competitive laps. He
mhm.
was only like 2/10 off the pace when they had same tires on. So
Yep.
they did learn, they probably did learn something, but for the fan base, everybody around me was like, there's probably 40% Larson fans in my area, and it was just like everybody was like, "Are you fucking kidding me right now?"
Now, were your seats in what we call disappointment corner, or where would you say your seats were?
What was that
They
Heartburn turn?
Pessimism alley.
they were
Loserland.
it was pit stall number 2 or 3 when you first go on the pit road is where I was
Okay.
sitting, about 7 rows up. But
You
So
said pissed
separate.
off. You said
Yeah.
pissed off number 2 or 3.
yeah. Anyway,
So separate.
what I want to say is I've been to Bristol a few times since uh they went to this next gen car, and you can't really tell any speed difference. But I'm telling you, after twice seeing Darlington with these cars, they've got to bring the power back. Got to, because I can tell that they're lugging off the corners.
Yeah,
I mean,
it doesn't pass the eye test for speed like it used to.
it does not. And I was there in 2018 for the throwback here, and the speed difference is insane. And for people like Dave Moody that say they don't see a difference, they're lying to you because I do.
Yeah. I noticed it when we were at Bristol because I mean I remember I was there when Newman qualified sub 15 and I was like, holy shit. I didn't think that would ever be
In that
possible.
14.9, right?
Yep. When he whipped it around there and yeah, um that was impressive. And like now, you go to these things like when we went to Bristol last year, I don't know about everybody else's experience. That was my first next gen race. I didn't feel like I needed the headphones. Like I used to have hearing protection because the cars were so loud when you've got, 43 of them with 800 to 900 horsepower, you're talking 40,000 something horsepower rattling that place. That's not the case anymore. They were way down. So, 650 is a lot less horsepower. It's a lot more, I get that it's more fan friendly. You can have a conversation a little bit better, but when I go into Thunder Valley, I want to feel it. I don't go there because if I want to go talk to you while we're watching the race, I'll go to Daytona.
I,
Okay. So what'd you just think? And then like that's what that's
I
for.
like I said, I was around stall 2 or 3, and when they had to, before they said, "Gentlemen, start your engines," they were probably, let's just say, 70 yards away. The last car was about 70 yards away. When they said, "Gentlemen, start your engines," and they started, I couldn't hear them. Could not hear them. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I know that's beating a dead horse, but every driver saying it, every owner saying it, the fans are saying it, and NASCAR keeps sitting on their hands. It's got they've got to put power back in these cars because that's the reason why they could. That's another reason I was bored. I'm sitting there watching, trying to get into it because my driver's not in it. Nobody could pass. And those that there was, if there was somebody passing, there was one car passing, and everybody else was just stationary.
So from your perspective, for the little bit you did stay there for, so moving on to the rest of the race, separate from Larson's dilemma, I know for TV, so this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. When they had Kyle Petty and Richard Petty up in the booth, and they had the various people up through there throughout the race broadcast on TV. At one point, I don't know if anybody else caught this, but Mike Joy said so. Richard Petty threw out the comment something to the effect of like, "Why aren't we talking about what's going on back in the field?" They're
Yeah.
racing their guts out back here, and you keep showing Byron leading by, a country mile or whatever. And
Mhm.
Mike Joyce said, well, that's just the way the TV package has got. But he basically insinuated if you want to see the rest of the race, you need to buy a ticket. That the broadcasting job is to cover, the front of the race. And I was like, well, that's kind of insulting. So if you want me to see everything that's going on, I gotta go to the race. But when I go to the race, you don't give me shit to do. You don't have anything in the infield most of the time. You don't have any of the VIP stuff and the hospitality stuff, and you've made it so expensive with the hotels. The food is overpriced. The drinks are overpriced. Um, you want me to pay to get autographs, so you've made the at-track experience not what it used to be. But then you've also taken and at least one of the broadcast partners, not all, because we're not going to judge Prime or TNT yet. We got to see what they do, but at least Fox focuses heavily on the front of the field and not about what you're hearing on the radio when you listen to the broadcast of this one's passing this one, or you can see on the other screens if you follow it along in Max or whatever. I just thought that was a really disrespectful or jab at the fans. Like, your job is to paint the sport in the best light. Okay, some days there's going to be a guy who's got a massive lead. You can't tell me there's not other things going on that y'all could paint a picture of. So why are you not showing all the other stuff that's going on out in the field? Give those other cars TV time. They're back there racing. You
I
know,
will say, as far as fan activation, there was a lot that could be done. There was a ton of cars there, older cars from there was cars from the 60s, there was cars from the 70s, 80s, 90s. There was a ton of cars there. They had NASCAR experience stages. I mean, they had a ton of stuff going on, and that's up from 2022 when I went there.
Okay.
There's probably double the amount of stuff to do. So they are listening as far as that
That's good.
at that track, but I still have the same gripe. The bathrooms still look like they were the original bathrooms from 75 years ago. They were celebrating 75 years of Darlington, and it was the same bathrooms.
With
It's
75-year-old toilet paper.
oh yeah,
Everybody stands
bamboo
in a
toilet
circle and
paper.
pees in the urinal. Yep.
Half ply.
It's a literal trough
Yep.
along the wall, and you stand shoulder to shoulder, and you gotta tell somebody don't look at my winky.
Why? What if they wanted?
The new world.
But
They can do
it's and if you have to wash your hands, well, you got to hold a button down, run one hand under it, hold it down, run the other hand, and there was no, you know, it's time to modernize. You got all this TV money, you got two races,
Yep.
use the TV money,
And you got two of the
and
biggest dates in the schedule.
yeah,
Retro weekend, which is usually leading up to Easter,
I mean,
and then
and
you've got the Labor
Southern
Day
500.
weekend.
the first race of the playoffs,
Yep, which is
and you can't spend that money to. They need to do two major things. Two major things. They need to upgrade the bathrooms and modernize them, not just a little bit. Rip them out and redo them. Modernize the shit out of those. My girlfriend said there wasn't even a mirror in the women's bathroom, and you need mirrors in the women's bathroom so they can see how good they look, whatever. They didn't have mirrors in the women's restroom, and she said it was disgusting in there too. But you need to modernize the bathrooms, and you need to do a shit ton better with the handicap access.
Yeah.
There's no ramps. There's there's a there's like two elevators that I saw, but like you need ramps. You need for people with wheelchairs. There's no way to get a wheelchair up anywhere that I saw, and it's like you are in 2025. Spend some money and update the outside of your facility. Yes, you've paved the track a few times. Spend the money where the fans are, and it's also make the damn seats wider. In 2025, people are taller than in 1950s. They're wider. They're definitely wider.
I was waiting to see what word you
And,
picked. They're more
and
plump. They
just
carry more water weight.
yeah, just I mean, Alan, you saw last year what Bristol
Mhm.
did with, and that was so much better, was it not, than the old
Yep, I
days?
do. I will say the
Yeah.
modernizations at Bristol with the drink row in front of
Yeah,
you,
those
directly on top of each other. That part's really nice.
seats were nice
Yeah.
because they were like that even when me and Blake went already.
We sat in about the same area,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah,
So
just make sure you
Byron,
cook your damn
yep,
chicken fingers all the way.
yep. Byron led basically all but the last piece of it. Everybody else, I, first off, when Keselowski lost his wheel, I was really impressed the wheel stayed on. Like that thing was rear steering, which was pretty cool to watch on TV. I was impressed they were able to see the wheel nut fly off and find it that quick. But then the way the car did that side drift was pretty impressive, and like the tire didn't come off. So one of the things I haven't heard and I didn't see, so since even though he lost the wheel nut and he never technically lost the tire, I assume they don't get the lost wheel penalty, correct?
They don't.
Okay. So I thought that
Yeah.
was interesting, but I
It
will
didn't come
say
off,
like
so that's all
go
that
ahead.
matters.
Yep. My
But it brought
takeaway
out
from it was Byron and them did not keep up with the track. They got so used to having clean air that when they got put back in there, they did not keep up with their car in preparation for dealing in dirty air while everybody else was in dirty air all day. And when it came
yeah.
time and it mattered most, those improvements mattered. But go
Well,
ahead.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead,
I
man.
see your hat. Go ahead.
Uh, so the thing with that, the whole caution there, it should have
Yep.
never been a caution. If they don't throw it for Brad sideways, you don't throw it at all. I think it was Corey LaJoy said it. I think so anyway. But they threw a caution for a wheel nut that was against the inside wall where they haven't ran since the early 1950s. Why are
No,
we throwing a caution
that's
for
not
a wheel
true.
nut?
Larson ran there on lap 3.
Shut up.
And 4 to go
Jesus
or whatever
Christ.
before we get to overtime.
So it's Larson's
Well,
fault they threw that caution.
20 extra minutes of show because you can't stop being sarcastic. But seriously, why are we throwing a caution for a wheel nut that is against the inside wall?
Because
Nobody's gonna
Larson
run
was
over
back on
that.
the track.
Shut up. Seriously though, there's no answer for that. They're slowly falling back into their nonsense where they're throwing cautions for nothing.
Yeah. I mean, they tried every way that I think they could have where they could try and orchestrate something other than Byron just having a dominant day for the first 2/3, 3/4 of
That's
the
what was
race.
helping him though. That's what
Yeah.
helped him do it. They were assisting to that.
Yeah.
And and going to the later parts of the race, when they did have to stop under green, I think, and I talked to Chris about this yesterday, Rudy Fugle, I think he was stuck on wanting to lead every fucking lap.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're not going to do that and win the race there. You can't. It's just, you lose too much time by staying out. And when he stayed out, what was it, 5 laps past Reddick?
Yep.
Yeah.
You're making up 2 seconds a lap. Like, that's stupid. The
Yep.
moment Reddick pitted, you should have came down the next lap and then you win the race. It's as simple as that.
Well,
Maybe not win, but it would have took Ryan Blaney a lot longer to catch you
so far we've
because you
had
had a 3 second lead, I believe, or 4.
Coda, Martinsville, Phoenix, here, and I think that's all the tracks we've had with the new softer tire. And everybody's like, I think they can go softer. I think it doesn't matter how soft you go at this point if you're not going to get rid of the stage cautions
Yep.
because the stages are short enough to where the drivers are always saying it. By the time that you're approaching the next cliff, the tire is supposed to fall off of and have that next drop in degradation in speed. Well, you're at a guaranteed pit stop. So you never get to see what the tire will fully do at, yes, you got it at Martinsville with 160 something laps, but that's not the same thing as Darlington that eats tires continuously and having to go for 80, 90, 100 laps. Where, like you said, the caution bailed Byron and them out. If that caution didn't happen, Byron goes way back in the pack real quick in the first one by trying to lead everything. And then you find out real quick whether or not their car, so they never had a chance really to tune on their car because they were never put back in that position because the stage caution saved them. And to me, I don't understand with these races where 2018 they implemented stage racing. So we are 7 years into stage racing at this point.
2017.
Yes, you're right. Sorry, 2017. I was thinking 18 because Carl quit in 2016. Okay, so we're 8 years into stage racing. These people can't all possibly in the entire industry be this fucking dumb and not see the plain problem. And I'm sure if you presented it to them today, they'd be like, "We did that at Indy, and look at what happened. McDowell ran away with it and everything." Yeah, but that was before you found this softer tire. Let's do it again with the softer tire and see what happens. Where there's no
Yeah.
Stop
cautions to
just
bail you
trying it
out.
on road courses.
Right. Let's take that same softer tire at Richmond or Martinsville. There are no stage cautions. I think you get back to regular caution intervals because you're going to have tire failures. You're going to have wrecked cars. And with those wrecked cars that can be repaired in the garage, you're going to have parts falling off. I think you're going to get back to the more natural flow of racing that everybody loved before we started trying to manipulate it. But you have to give it more than a one race sample size. You're going to have to give yourself probably a third of the season to start to see the arc swing the other way on where this could go. You can't just be like, my one race is my sample size. It didn't work out like we thought. Let's go back to safe ground.
Stop listening to all the fans that are just, you know, new fans that don't know no better. You know, you need to, like Mark Martin has talked about, you need to listen to the legacy fans because we're the ones that helped you get to where you're at.
Yeah.
And evidently we don't matter anymore.
But I mean, your soft tire can't do you any good if you cut its legs out from under it before it has a chance to do what it's designed to do. Because Goodyear said they've already gone as soft as they can. You can't go too much softer, or you just have a tire that completely fails out. But the soft tire definitely can't wear out if you don't let it go long enough to wear out before you save them from themselves.
Not without putting horsepower back in them.
Yeah. And that's the other alternative, which they're not going to do. So,
Well,
uh,
and
go ahead.
I'm not claiming to have helped them get them where they are, because I don't like where they are.
Yeah.
They're going the wrong direction with everything. So I want no part of any claim of
Well,
where the sport is now.
I'm talking about pre stages and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that last run, that last run before the final caution, that was an insane. That was racing right there. That was fun to watch.
Oh
You had
yeah.
different you know, strategies going on, and I believe the difference was 7 laps in tires, maybe 9.
Yep.
Then Blaney and Reddick,
Well,
7 laps.
the way Blaney was coming through there, I wasn't sure his tires were going to hold up long enough because he was coming quick. I was worried he was going to wear him out before he got there because he was gaining on him, 2 to 3 tenths a lap. But that's only so good so far when he's literally diving way down and then sliding back up and then diving way down, sliding back up. And I was like, I hope his tires hold off long enough to get there. And when he got past him, I was like, all right, that was a hell of a run from 17 seconds back to the lead. That was very impressive. So it's definitely not a impossible thing to do, but you do have to have a far enough disparity in tires for it to show off. And we only usually get to see that if the stages are structured right, and that's usually only when the third stage is long enough for the tires really to show their true performance degradation, makeup and requirements.
And then that's the sad part. You just made the comment. It's not impossible to get back to that kind of racing, other than NASCAR's making it impossible to get back to that racing.
Mhm.
They've proven you let the stages not run out, but you get rid of the stages, let the laps run out, and utilize the tires the way they're supposed to be utilized, proves that we can get back to that kind of damn racing. But it's never going to work with the scheduled damn caution. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, one thing to note to your point about the caution, Blake, with the wheel nut, I agree. I didn't think that with Brad's tire not coming off and not coming apart, I didn't think that was a caution. It sucked for him because they were in the top 10 when that happened. You know, he's doing what he's done. He's now staying buried in points. Like he's still 50 points back, amazingly somehow, from making it into the top 16. But they ain't never gonna get there with the way they're going unless they win. But the inconsistency of cautions. So Dale Jr. brought this up. I don't know if ever I listened to the interviews he does with drivers as well, or the various guests of the week. When he was talking to Casey Mears, and they were talking about some of the races that got away from Casey, one of the things they brought up was Carl Edwards' interview and the caution that basically ended Carl's title and then ultimately made Carl rethink whether or not he wanted to be a part of this sport in this light. And ultimately he walked away. But one of the things they were talking about was there's actually data you can go look at. There's a metric and a graph, and you can see the number of cautions per race per year. And it's steady at like 1 to 2 per race per year until we get to the Sprint Nextel contract. Then it spikes to 3 times that. And it continues to grow until guess what happened? Stage cautions. And then it plummeted right back down to normal because they didn't need to manipulate the race anymore to add cautions. We had them baked in. Well, that tells you like, how is that not them? The metrics, numbers don't lie. That right there is definitive proof NASCAR was manipulating the races, purposely putting their hand on the scale. So with the number of non-natural cautions, because let's bunch the field up. The number of drive wins that some of these drivers should have as a result of NASCAR just putting their thumb on the scale is crazy. And how does that change somebody's career? If Casey Mears wins one of those races, would he still have been in Cup? Would he still have been at Hendrick? Instead, he got replaced by, in comes Mark Martin, instead of Brad, and like all these different pieces move. One win changes all these different things. But NASCAR's like, we need it to be entertaining, so we're gonna put our thumb on the sport.
It kind of I can't believe I'm about to make this uh deal here, but I watched the F1 race from Japan this weekend when I got back from my trip. No caution. The top three were within 2 seconds of each other, and with three to go, there was a real chance that second was going to reach first. I mean, it was they were gaining a tenth a lap, and they were 1.4 seconds, 1.3, 1.2, and you get within a second, you get into the ability to
DRS.
deploy the
Yeah.
DRS, and like that was exciting. And guess what? There wasn't one caution the entire damn race. If F1 has all these fans, and that most of these fans watch the entire race and they don't care whether it's a 10-second lead or what I saw there was, three cars within 2.5 seconds, which at that speed is nothing. That literally they're on top of each other at that speed. And you're telling me that this sport that we went 70, I think it was 70 years without or I'm sorry, 68 years without stage breaks, and now we can't go back. Bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you can look at there's lots of different things that have changed the racing we see on TV into the entertainment era. But I think regardless of the car, regardless of the horsepower, the stage breaks are the biggest negative impact to the NASCAR racing we see today because it takes away so much from strategy and takes away so much from the tire wear and the putting it back in the driver's hands. If I know I don't know when the caution's coming and I've got to take that soft tire at Martinsville or the softer tire at Phoenix or wherever, and I've got to go possibly 200 laps on it and it's really only good for 170. I got to figure out how to find 40 or 50 laps of managing my equipment or the right strategy if I don't know when that caution's coming. And I think that's where, it led to Byron leading 3/4 of the laps because you knew when the cautions were coming, but it also worked against him because when they did get caught by that late caution, they had never had their car in a position other than out front in clean air, and they didn't know what to do with it. They'd
Yep.
only adjusted on the car to be a lead car, not a traffic car.
Yep.
So go ahead, Kev.
And they, I mean, they've killed you know, them coming down, seeing if they're going to run out of gas too. Like the suspense of that, making it, to the end on gas. They've killed that. I mean, they've just killed so much more of the entertainment of it, and it's frustrating because Darlington, it's supposed to be too tough to tame. That race was boring until the end.
Mhm.
I mean, boring. So, they've got to do something.
It was almost as bad as when they put restrictor plates on them at Loudon and Jeff Burton led every lap.
From
And
second.
and the problem is it didn't have to be that way, but NASCAR has engineered it that way, and they don't know how to back themselves out of the hole they painted themselves into
They
between
know
stage
how, they just
cautions,
don't want to.
the lack of horsepower, the car design, the hold the TV partners have over the schedule and the format of the races and the start times. Like there's just so many things that I really, everybody says it all the time, would we be here if Dale Sr. was still here or Bill France Jr. was still here? And they say it, and it's kind of like a cynical thing. But I really do wonder if Jim had been more like his, was it his grandfather, Bill France Jr. or father, because Brian, Jim, they're all, yeah. So if they had been more like their dad, or if Dale Sr. had still been alive and was still a team owner, like how does this sport look if you still have those strong voices in the garage? You don't have them because Harvick's not a team owner. Hamlin is, but they're suing NASCAR. So they're not going to do anything he has to say. And he's come up with lots of good ideas. They're not going to listen to him now, even before the lawsuit. the one thing they have listened to was the bracket, and that's because they could make money on it. So,
Yeah, because the sad part is the people that are still in the sport that were around even when Earnhardt was here. The big one that really disappoints me being Childress. I mean, I'm not a
yeah,
Childress fan at all, but you really rolled over and you signed that fucking contract.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything else to say about Darlington. For the spring race and for it being Darlington, it was one of those that in the past we've had much better races. It's okay if, sometimes you have somebody that just out and outright finds the setup and spanks them. But it just definitely wasn't one of the best Darlington races in the last 5 years by any means.
Yeah. Well, we gotta bring up that pit stop the 11 crew
Oh
ripped
yeah.
off. The
So
and they've been talking about it. The way that the jackman flips the jack around in
mhm.
his body to it almost looks like the old school, 21 crew flying around there. But he flips that around and the front tire changer's like out of his way, and it's beautiful to watch. But to jump from, I can't remember if he was third or fourth, but he jumped from third or fourth to the lead because that crew is just on it every single time.
Yep.
And
They that so we can go back ever since the next gen debuted, the pit stops by the JGR cars, they've tried stuff. Some of it hasn't worked out well or has been not consistent enough, so they've reverted back like they did with the tire changer routine where everybody comes around the front instead of the back and everything, like what they were doing there didn't really work for a consistent standpoint, so they rolled back. But this in this case really paid dividends. I mean, it won them the race.
yeah,
And in the case of Blaney, I mean, I have a hard time just believing how bad a championship level crew is. Like, you're not just bad, you're like damn near last.
19 spots lost on pit road.
Yeah. Well, they
On,
they ranked, I
on
think, 34th out of 36.
yeah, but Blaney's end of it, he was third or fourth.
Yep.
So the driver was doing really good. The team was shit,
I
and
mean,
and
we've had
really
that
and
in the past with
truly,
Larson. We've had that in the past with others. The 48 crew would move their people around or whatever. But I'm just surprised that Penske's pit game in general is just as bad as it is
and
for a top
you
team.
know, Denny's crew did a 9-4.
Yep.
Blaney's crew did a 10-2, and he lost four or three spots on pit road. It's
Yep.
crazy. Just you have to be faster than 10-2. And
Well,
this the same sport that in 1998 at 18.2 seconds pit stop was fast.
so one of the things Bozy mentioned when he was on with Actions Detrimental talking about the pit stops and all that stuff this week that I thought was interesting, you know, is NASCAR going to have to step in and take away that advantage again about what some of the teams have done with the jacks versus others, like they did with the pit guns? I mean, I hope not. I mean, if you keep taking away all the innovation, just recall yourself F1 and let's be done. Except for F1 has more innovation than you guys do at this point.
Well, I've had an
Because
idea
F1's not a damn kit car.
since they first did the single lug. I've had an idea, and not many people will like it. Right now, you have a jackman, gasman, two tire changers, and a tire carrier.
Yep.
Right? Get rid of the tire carrier, make both jackmen, or not jackmen, I'm sorry, ugh, both tire changers carry their own tire across the thing, and you're gonna make them have to do their own, take the tire off now, have to pick up their own tire, make it to where the jackman cannot help, and that will change pit road dramatically.
It would slow them back down to like a
Yeah.
12 or 13-second pit stop, maybe even 15 seconds.
Yep. And it will change this nonsense about waiting on fuel because I mean they'll figure it out, but a lot of times you're short in fuel because you're done changing the tires.
Yeah. Thoughts? Anybody? No?
No,
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about with that race in particular?
I'm just
no,
glad
man.
there's not a 24 that won.
Yep. I wanted Blaney to win. When Blaney didn't win, I wanted the 11 to win. I didn't want Reddick to win because Reddick, there were a couple things I saw, where when he wrecked the 21, I was pretty pissed because he and Byron did the same thing. The difference is Reddick wrecked a lead lap car to Byron wrecking a lapped car that he was lapping
Yeah.
again, essentially. Um, but just in general, like I critiqued him, and some of the Byron fans in our other group, former group, were like, I don't know why you're so hard on him. First, he's not aggressive enough. Now he's too aggressive. Not too aggressive. I said the difference is where he's aggressive. Not being aggressive enough at Coda to win the damn race when you're right there in third and not nutting up and going getting the trophy is not the same thing as you're the fucking leader and you're racing around Carson Kosovar, who is notorious for running over people, and you have control of the race and you're leading. Don't put yourself in a stupid position to be taken out. And don't make
Yep.
an enemy that you're going to have to lap again. Like these two situations, they're not apples to apples. They're apples to
Yeah.
oranges. One is being smart and protecting your car while you're leading. The other is it's closing laps and it's time to go get the trophy in the check, and you don't have the balls to race just a little dirty to go get the trophy. They're not the same thing. So,
Yeah, I agree.
um, so I've just been hard on him to the beginning because I don't feel like Byron has the killer instinct that Chase has or that Larson has, or even his, what would be considered sometimes the third or the fourth guy, Bowman has. I mean, Bowman, he showed when he punted Hamlin that he'll do what's necessary to win.
Yeah, I honestly don't know that Chase has it anymore.
I I agree. I don't think he's got it either, but I mean, Chase had it for a while because he went and got a championship. Where I just don't see Byron. I just don't see that aggression in him. He just does not have the instinct necessary to go to the next level that I feel like you need to become a champion.
The only thing
No.
Byron's really good at is being consistent. He's consistently top five, top seven,
Mhm. Well, I
and
mean,
but with that, he doesn't show any aggression that I ever. The only thing I ever see him do is bail on teammates when they're in need of help.
yeah. I mean, he's out to a comfortable 50-point lead at this point over second place in the points. That unless something happens, he's damn near got the championship for the regular season locked up already with his 90 stage points. I mean, they just keep knocking those down where there's only two or three people that have above 70, and the rest of them are like 40 or less. So
Yeah,
it's
we're coming up on some tracks that he's not so good at. So
yeah, but
He's the
so
new Mark Martin.
yeah.
Forget Denny Hamlin. He's the new Mark Martin.
Yeah.
So what you got on your list there, Alan?
So let's talk about
The
this
boot.
Rick Ware. Let's be done with the weekend for now, and let's talk about the other news that came out leading into this weekend, which was Jimmy Johnson and them are suing Rick Ware over this charter. We talked about it a little bit, but the new revelation is by how much. And so we were talking earlier about a little bit about the positions and things like that. So it's alleged that under the new charter agreement, which is good for the next 7 years, Rick Ware is selling and agreed to sell to Jimmy Johnson Racing, I mean Legacy Motor Club, one of their charters for $45 million. That's the low for the start here. 40 million was the last high, and I think they said Haas sold his for in the 20s. So if 45 million is the low, and that's like the back marker team, I definitely feel like you can make a strong argument for each one of Hendricks and Gibbs and Penske's, charters are all easily north of 100 plus, every one of them.
Well, at least 75 or 80.
And that's the what I think is the low end because you're basing it off of the financial returns and the value. But one point that they made, which is still this, so Dale Jr. insinuated on his show this week that he doesn't see a scenario where the charters would ever go away from this point on based off that money. But the charter agreement's still only good for the duration of the charter agreement. So they're still only worth 45 million until that 7 years runs out. I bring that up only to say NASCAR currently is in legal dispute with 2311 over the current charter agreement. Can you imagine what kind of legal ramifications there would be if they nullified them at the end of the 7 years? And you're not dealing with podunk race team owners anymore at this point. You're dealing with Gainbridge. You're dealing with the Fenway Group. You're dealing with not, you'll still be dealing with Michael Jordan's people again, but you're dealing with all these billion-dollar investment firms who are starting to buy out a lot of these lower tier teams in the boardroom now versus NASCAR. I don't see how they win that battle legally. I think they lose, and that I don't think they just lose that. I think they lose like a portion of NASCAR as a whole, in terms of their financial loss. So I just think that was pretty crazy that for the last place one, now we're talking $45 million. And then the other part is if Jimmy Johnson's team needs a new charter so bad, we talked about it when the new charter agreement came out. If you're a team and you're looking, we were talking about a little bit about it last week, if Dodge comes in, what is their approach? NASCAR's still got 4 charters for themselves. They're just sitting there. If each one of them is worth 45 million at the back, roughly, and that's the even because they have no base value to start from, so it might as well be last. And you're just going to give somebody a $45 million asset to
No
join
way.
the sport. They're not going to have to pay for it. What does that say to the rest of the teams that, yeah, they were gifted theirs, but they've also invested hundreds of millions of dollars throughout the history of
The
the
question,
sport to get
the
it?
question I have is where is Jimmy Johnson getting this $45 million from, and why? What driver?
They had an investment partner similar to what Gainbridge. That's how they got. They didn't say who it was, but that's who bought out
Kendrick.
Rory Gallagher. Yeah,
But why? Why? What driver do you have waiting in the wings to take over this ride that you don't have yet? Like who are you putting in it?
yeah,
Like it doesn't make sense at all.
yeah. I don't know
And,
who they're
and
buying the third charter for at
to,
all.
to beat all that, their team sucks right now.
And
And like I think Chris was telling me, if why don't you figure out how to run 2 teams before you try to start a third?
Yeah,
not only, well, I mean, on the same hand, they could be looking at buying the damn thing to do the same thing that Rick Ware's doing. We want the charter so that we can lease it out. So that way we've got more income coming in right now. Somebody else is going through the expense of putting the car on the track. We're just making the money on the charter.
You can only lease it out for 2 years at a time.
yeah.
Well, I get that, but still.
And Justin Marks did say that his math numbers said that 3 teams is the sweet spot. 4 is too much financially. 2 is not quite enough to make it
3
all the
teams is
different
all you can have
pieces.
anymore anyway.
So, I mean, but I agree. Like, if you're buying a third charter, what's the goal of the third charter? Is it to put another car on the table for you directly? If so, who? If it's not, then what are you going to get out of it by leasing it out for the 2 years or whatever? Is it really going to make that much of a difference to your program?
But none of you touched on the other point to that whole argument in the whole lawsuit that I hope he doesn't get into trouble for saying it. But did you hear fucking Baldwin's comment on DBC?
Which one? I listened to the conversation. Which piece are we talking about?
The fact that he threw it in there, then they skimmed over it, didn't
Yes.
bring it up, didn't go into it, but he made the comment that they were not made aware, which of course then it comes
yes.
back that
About
it's
the
your fault
conflicting contract language.
not that, but that they changed the date on it.
Yeah.
From the 2026 or from 2027 to 2026, and that was changed and not discussed with them.
Yeah.
Yep. And
So is that why he's able to back out because they changed the date?
Well, that's what I think that's going to be their approach when they go to court. That
The thing is the thing Tommy was saying that it sounds like Rick Ware is slowly trying to get out altogether. He said, he wants money to be able to live the rest of his life and enjoy time with his family. And I'm thinking, well, if that's the case, then just let all this happen, because Who cares if it's a year early? Just let it happen and you sell
No,
both your teams, you'll have $100 million.
he didn't want all the way out. He still wanted one charter.
But what I'm
This is,
saying is, it sounds like the way Tommy Baldwin's talking, it sounds like Rick Ware wants out.
and I didn't catch that from it, but
Well,
Rick,
I'd have to go
go back
back
and
and listen to it
re-listen
again.
to it. It sounds like he wants to get out and be able to enjoy time with his family.
well, I will say one piece of news that came out today, around lunchtime today. Legacy Motor Club received a restraining order injunction against Rick Ware Racing until this is resolved. So what that means is Rick Ware can't take the other charter that they currently have leased to RFK and release it or sell it until this contract dispute is done. Because I assume that's the charter that they would have been selling, the one that's under lease currently to RFK, which I'm sure RFK would have to enter into this lawsuit at some point, because if they're currently leasing it and you can lease it for up to 2 years, what's the lease agreement between
That's
RWR
a
and
1 year
RFK?
deal. That's a 1 year deal.
No,
Ryan
no.
Priest's deal is 1 year.
Ryan Priest's deal is 1 year. What's the charter deal? Those aren't the
That's a
same.
1 year deal. I think I remember hearing it was a 1 year deal. The whole
If it
thing's a
is, then
1 year
that's
deal.
fine. But if it ends up not being a 1 year deal, then now RFK has to get involved, because where does their third car come from? Like, hey, we were running under the assumption we had a lease for agreement for a third charter. If Johnson and them win, now they got to go find another charter. So
How?
I think it's just there's a lot of interesting, things that could happen there, and we're just getting into the fun of it. So, any other comments about that one?
No.
I No, I still can't believe they're even trying to buy it. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I gotta be
The only
honest. I
thing that
can't
makes
believe
sense
somebody's
is
spending
Dodge.
45 million on a charter for 7 years, unless you're going to put it with a top tier team. Because if you're going to get your money's worth out of that, whatever a final official number is, 50%, 40%, whatever the financial cut is, are you going to make up $45 million of investment for the charter, all the components you have to do to build the race team around it, for an asset that's only worth 45 million for a 7 year period right now?
Well, hold on. It's actually only for a 5 year. The original agreement sounds like it was only for a 5 year period.
No, it's for the duration of the charter of the
Duration of
contract.
the
It's
TV
7 years.
contract.
I'm talking about buying that charter.
Oh, I agree. There's
If it
only
was
5 years left
originally
on the contract.
2027, it would have been 5 years left. Like you're,
Yeah.
playing with fire there.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
So,
Podcast people would love to hear this squeaker, Remy.
yeah, we do. So that leaves us with what I have as the last topic on my list: tariffs. Not to relitigate all the other stuff we talked about, just that as of today, they went into effect. I'm interested on what you have to say about this, Kevin, because we talked before. You were interested in becoming a dealer at some point, potentially. Well, now the
Was being the
tariffs
operative word.
are at 104%. We don't know what that looks like, but the first round of price increases got released publicly that we had kind of talked about in our previous statements from Lionel in the previous issues. So I've already I'll give my 2 cents and the floor is yours. I already canceled all my pre-orders for this very reason, because I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew it wasn't done when they raised it to 20% and then jumped to 34%. So now you're at a 54% tariff. And Lionel was originally only going to give us a 5% chunk of that 20. Now we're at 104%. We don't know what that looks like to Lionel, but I'm really glad I don't have anything sitting there waiting with this giant pending cost that could be levied on me at any time, and I have no control over it whatsoever. So, and I definitely wouldn't want to be you if you became a dealer with let's just pretend all the inventory on the shelves behind you was stock you had just acquired that you incurred all those tariff fees on, and now you've got to sell it and try and make up that cost. Like, I know I'm not, my buying habits based on around here, I'm not ever going to pay. And I think I don't blame Lionel, other than they're the ones who chose to move all their shit to China at the time. You have to charge what you got to charge, or you can't stay in business. But I don't think the diecast market will bear $100 for a hood open race win, no fucking details ARC that used to be $60 and now is going to be 100 or more with these new tariffs. You were going to go into dealing, so you had said already it kind of put you on hold. How does this change your opinion even more, Kevin?
Well, I'll just say that idea is completely out the window now. And in fact, I even myself am not planning on buying any pre-orders on anything until they really figure out what the heck they're going to do. So I've completely put a pause on buying anything this year new at this point, and I'm just going to work off what I have for now till they figure some stuff out. But they're going to have to, if they're going to have to do something, or yeah, they're going to be bankrupt because people aren't going to pay it. This is not a necessity. This is a hobby. This is not something we have to have. So it won't withstand it. There'll be so many race wins, so many cars that don't get produced because they won't fill the orders.
Yeah. And to give you some contrast, like it was 110 for a race win or for an elite, standard elite, not race win. The hood open race win right now, ARC is 99.95, and that's before whatever they do with this next round of tariffs. That was just the first adjustment. Now they're going to have to raise them again. We just don't know to what. The special finishes are at 110 for that same hood open car and a race win. Well, a special finish elite was only 115 to 125. So you've already eclipsed what was the top tier, and we haven't even gotten there yet. Now the standard elite, not the premier, with the elite race win is 155. That's more than a premier by $15. So that means the premiers are going to have to jump. They had a $15 to $20 price change. That means the premiers are going to jump to almost 200. Like I
Or
think
more.
we went from are we on the edge to I think you just jumped it. Like we're now over what most people will pay.
We jumped the
Yep.
cushion.
And
If I
so
was Lionel, I would stop production right now and just put it on hold.
Yep.
Put it on hold. Get rid of what you have in stock now.
Back stock, yeah.
Yep.
And
And what's
hold.
already current in production, and then
I
no
mean,
more future
you
submissions.
have got to wait. Tell people like us, hey, we understand you love your collections and we love giving you your collections, but we're gonna wait this out. And we'd be okay with that.
My only
Because
thing I see with that, I agree. I think we'd be okay with it. I think you would lose your employees because you can't, if you're not selling revenue or purchases, you're not creating revenue. No revenue, no employees. So I think they either go bank. If the way I see it, the first month, okay, you're going to see a decline in sales. The second month, you're going to see a major drop in sales, especially for those, forget our die-cast cars that are in the $100, $200 a pop. We did the math on that $700 train. Now at 104% tariff to that thing. That train just jumped to almost $1,000 because we already had $138 at the 5% tariff mark. It's going to be over $1,000 for that $7 train with taxes, shipping, and the tariff too. So you're adding astronomical increases to the cost of these things that you're never, as a person who collects them, going to get back out of them if you decide to sell them. So you're pouring money into a fire pit, covering it with gasoline and lighting it on fire.
We're already not ever going to get a return on these.
Right.
We know that going in, but
Yeah.
this just makes it worse.
But now you're going to sell them for like pennies at best compared to what they were going in.
yet at this point, you kind of got to wonder, like, do I try to get a hold of Brent and go, hey, how much you still buying? You still buying collections? You know, like, because if you can't
Yeah,
add to the collection,
you're going to
if you
need
can't
to do.
add to the collection, you need to get rid of the collection.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting ready to downsize a bunch. I've got a buyer lined up for a bunch of stuff that as I consolidate to downsize, just as I refine my collection. But I mean, I really, at the 5 and 20% mark, I was like, okay, it's gonna be painful, but they'll survive. Maybe we'll have to scale back on what we get for elites. At 54%, that became damn near a certainty, and at 104%, it's an absolute. Like,
Yep.
I really don't
Yep.
see how they stay in business if this goes on more than 3 or 4 months. I think they file for bankruptcy by the end of the year because of the loss. And I
So
think,
yesterday, so sorry, go ahead.
no, go
Sorry.
ahead. Well, I was going to say the only other thing is, and Lionel's a big company. They're the ones with the manufacturing process. Now I shift down the line by one iterative to Brent. I think it puts Brent completely out of business,
Oh yeah.
unfortunately. And
Aside
Terry at
aside
Diecast
from
Depot,
buying the
like
collections.
I can see those guys, the amount they're going to have to eat, especially if everybody abandons their pre-orders and stuff like that. Like, Brent's market primarily is ARCs. That's where he makes his living. That's where, Kevin, you would be if you had gone down that path. Like that's the normal. You can do elites like Terry does, but most of the resellers stick mostly to the ARCs because there's a bigger profit margin, a lower entry cost point. With this higher tariff thing, I genuinely worry for people like Brent. I'm glad you're not in it right now. For Terry, for Hall's Diecast, for anybody who's doing that is currently still taking in volumes of orders, because you're going to have to consume all this cost, and there's no guarantee you're going to reap all that back. So, and you're just going to be sitting on all this inventory.
Yeah, I mean, you canceled your pre-order. How
Yeah.
many others have already done it too?
Yep.
Hundreds, guaranteed. So what I was going to say is that yesterday, against better judgment, probably. Now I had been ordering Premier Elites whenever they're offered, no matter what.
Yep.
So yesterday I ordered the throwback, standard elite, and the Coke 600, the 1100, miles deal, standard elite, and it was still 110, I guess it was, and after it showed the tariff, and after everything, it was like 238 or something like that. And that was with shipping, tariff, everything. I screenshotted all that shit before I hit submit. And then today you tell me it's jumped even more. So
Significantly more.
I screenshotted all that to show, because I've, in the screenshots, you'll have a time thing, if, a year from now, when those cars finally come out, if they come out at
Yeah,
all, if they
assuming
even
they
get
meet
built.
MOQ at this point.
Yeah. If they do, that way, if they try to give me a 60% tariff, well, hold on a second. I agreed to this right here. I've got screenshots of what I was submitting for.
Well, last week we gave them credit, remember, for coming out and saying, here, you're going to have to pay this tariff after this, but not before this. One
Mhm.
thing they didn't say was the flexibility or fluctuation in that tariff going forward. There is
And
some
was it
language in their email that just says, we'll reevaluate as the situation develops. Okay, well, let's develop to not double, not triple, but 4 times the amount of the original tariff and then some. Because the original tariff that they're going to pay is 20%. Now the original tariff is 104%. So they're not going to be able to get away with saying we're only going to charge you 5% of 20. If they're only charging us 5% of 20 before, I have to assume that means they're going to charge us 20 of 104 if they're baking it in that way. And I would suspect it's going to be more, probably closer to 25 to
I'd say it'd be
30%.
25%. Yeah.
I'm thinking closer to 25 to 30%.
Yeah.
Well, at 25 to 30% on one of those cars, you most certainly are now in the $200 range for a Premier Elite minimum. Your gold elites that are 225
The,
jump to 300.
the thing is, you might have answered it earlier, and I apologize if you did.
That's okay.
Why did just the race wins go up?
I
It
think
doesn't
they're
make sense
phasing
to
it
me.
in. I don't think they're done, obviously. I think they just started with that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's dumb. It's, you know, that's the one that everybody wants is the race one.
Yep.
That's why they started there.
Yep.
Mhm.
So your
If
special
you're gonna
finish elite
slowly
is
phase it
120
in, you
bucks.
phase in the non-raced wins.
So a special finish elite non-race win at if they end up charging us 25%, which would follow the incremental math based off the original 20%, and they only charged us 5. So at 104, let's assume they charge us 25%. The base price goes up $30. We haven't gotten to taxes or anything else yet. Are they going to discontinue our platinum discounts to offset that? Doesn't matter what tier you're at, or your loyalty status or any of that stuff. And again, I won't blame them if they do it, because at the end of the day, if you're not in business, you can't stay in business. You got to sell product to stay in business.
Yeah,
And
that's why I say they should just hold
yeah,
because
I agree. I think at this point you almost have to say, all right, we're not taking any more orders till this kind of stabilizes and we know what's going to happen. Because
you can always go back and make cars that people want a year down the road or whatever.
yeah. Hey, you can even come out with a special tariff edition. This is the tariff edition car. Kind of like, how we had the moonshine cars back in the day, like the bootleggers. These are the bootleg cars that we couldn't make due to tariffs, but now we're bringing them back as a special release. I'm glad I pulled the trigger and canceled mine when I did and didn't have to pay that $30 a car, because I don't think they're going to take that issue anymore. If it just jumped and skyrocketed, they're going to have to retrieve some revenue somehow. So they haven't announced what they're going to do yet, but I'm expecting to see something.
If anybody wanted to get into making diecast cars in America, now is the time.
Now would be the
You
time.
can
Yep.
just come in and just slaughter
Yep.
Lionel.
Yep. And I'm not advocating the death of Lionel by any means, but I mean and like I said, I feel their pain. I feel bad for them. And it's not something you have to put on the table, but you chose to put this business in a country that is economically hostile to us. So this is the risk you take. When you choose to, we all choose to buy all our shit off Amazon, and it all comes from Taiwan and from China and Korea and wherever, because that's just where those factories are at. Well, if you build your day-to-day life surviving around that and your things you have to have, then this is one of the unfortunate downsides. Like, I'm worried about my business, and I'm just in food, in a bar. Like, I'm hoping not too much of the things I need have any tie to that, but they're going to incur some type of cost raise anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm just getting open. I'm 6 months into business. Like, I can't even tell you today that I'll be here 6 months from now in terms of that business. I might be living in my barn and just not be a bar for a while, unfortunately. I mean, I've set myself up financially where we can handle that, but it will suck. And it's through no fault of our own, so, and no different than, the situation some of these companies are in. So that's all I wanted to bring up with the tariffs. I wasn't going to talk about them again, on the fact that all of a sudden they went into effect today, and like at Friday I think it was Friday the other night, he jumped it to like some astronomical number. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, are you trying to put these companies out of business? Like, that's what you're going to do. And maybe that's, it definitely would make, I would think it would make a company like Lionel really reevaluate doing business in China. Do you want to go out of business, or do you want to relocate your factory?
Well, that's kind of what he's said
So
the
it's
whole
done.
time. What the point of this is?
Yeah. So
So, the last thing that I have, and you sort of touched on it earlier, you and Chris, they're using PJ1 again instead of
yeah.
resin.
Yep.
They're going to do the bottom, was it 4 feet or whatever?
Yeah, something like that.
And I think that was the reason why the tire deal happened last year. Is resin instead of PJ1 on concrete in cold weather. Because if I remember right, they used PJ1 in the fall race, not resin. So I think you'll have your typical Bristol race again, where the bottom grooves dominant for 150, 200 laps, and the last 300 laps, you better be wall riding or you're not going to go nowhere.
Yeah. I just wish we talked about before we started the show. One, Bristol, by far, like by a country mile, my favorite racetrack ever. There's nothing else in the world like walking into that place and watching race cars go around. No, even the ones with the shitty horsepower we got now, it's still nothing else like it. So I wish they would stop messing with the track and just let it age naturally and let the grooves go where they need to go and let the racing speak for itself. If they end up all up top, they end up all up top. If they end up all around the bottom, they end up all around the bottom. But the concrete is not going to age, and it doesn't age like asphalt by any means, but it's not going to go through all those cycles if you keep treating it and keep adding these chemicals to it, because you're changing the chemical nature of that concrete every time you put it in there. We saw it with Texas. Once you put it on there, sometimes the shit never comes out and you ruin the racing surface permanently. So, it ruined it for IndyCar. What once was one of the best ones at Texas is now, it's like ice for them. So I do worry that that's going to happen, that at some point they're going to put this stuff so far down, or so down too many times at one of these tracks that we don't want it, and it's going to ruin a perfectly good track, and they're going to have no choice but to pave it again.
Well, I hope they do ruin Bristol then, because all you have to do, and I've said this before, and I can't remember if I said it on the show or not. I know I've said it to both of you at different times. If Marcus Smith put out a press release after the Spring Bristol race this weekend, we're going to tear up the pavement and we're going to put it back to pre-07 banking. That track will sell out in a heartbeat for the fall race. In a heartbeat. All you have to do is do that. You spend $1 million for 2021, 2022, 2023 to put dirt on the track. So $4 million you spent to do that. Spend some of your TV money you're getting and repave the track to pre-07, and you'll have yourself a sellout again, and people will be willing them to their family members again.
Well,
That's
when
all
we
you gotta
talked
do.
about the California thing, did we talk about the amount of money they said that they thought it would take? I don't remember.
300
I don't know
million.
if we did. It was
300 million. Like, I know we talked about the amount of money, but did we talk about it on the podcast?
I don't remember. To be honest with you.
Well, the reason why I say that is because you brought up the $1 million to cover the place in fucking dirt that nobody asked for. Which the third year actually turned out to be a really damn good race, but the first two sucked because the dirt is so finicky there and everything. But if you're not willing to build a short track in California because the cost of 300 million, but you're willing to dump $1 million a year into dirt, $3 million to $5 million a year into asphalt at somewhere like the LA Coliseum, $5 million to do the Chicago street race, like, stop hoarding the money and just fucking fix the problem. Put the track back the way it was. You already have the facility and it's there, and we've already proved that, all these other tracks are getting bought up and paved over and turned into neighborhoods and warehouses. Like, just start dumping your money into to your point about Darlington being upgraded, like, rebuild these tracks, go back in, resurface them, upgrade the amenities, take the ones you got left, which really ain't that many, and turn them into world-class racing facilities that look like, and much as I hate it, now, Coda is an awful fucking track for NASCAR, but it was built for Formula One. And if you compare it as a Formula One racetrack to Beijing or Dubai or Bahrain, it is a world-class Formula One open wheel racetrack with those big sweeping turns, those overarching paddock or stands and everything. It's a cathedral essentially to open wheel racing, just like these other places are. Our facility should be a cathedral to stock car racing, and they're not.
And the thing is I know it costs a lot of money to pave, It costs probably a little bit more to do concrete. I'm not 100% sure, but it can't cost, in my eyes, it can't cost more than a few $1 million. It can't. It's concrete, and you have to, you have to take the fencing out, but like it's not that big a track. It cannot cost more than a few $1 million. You wouldn't think. And you spent that for 3 years putting dirt on the track. So just repay the damn thing, and you got an instant sellout like that.
Now, am I the only one who would really like to see it like filled with water just to see what it would look like as a
They
pond?
did an image of it a couple days ago.
I just think it'd be neat. Fill Bristol up because there's no tunnels. You have to go up and out, like turn it into a pond. I'd like to see a genuine bass fishing tournament inside there. You stock that sucker, and then the fans surround it. I just think it'd be awesome. But or jet ski racing, like you fill it with water and do jet ski racing with jumps and shit. But that's all I had. I'm good. What about y'all?
Yeah,
Any last
I
reminders of
I
things
gotta
on
get to bed.
Chris,
I got nothing.
Kevin?
All good.
Well, we're going to Bristol. That's my favorite track. I'm hoping we get a good race. That's all I want. Um, and it's the last one. Well, that's really the last point to touch on. So this is the last race before the first break of the year, and we're essentially, we're at 9 races in. We're a
Home
third of
for
the
a good
race
year.
into the season, or a quarter of the way. Based on the trends we've got, I don't see any super surprise winners coming. I think you're going to have very much it's going to be one of those years where you're going to have like the big 4 or 5 essentially. And you're not going to end, I don't think we're going to end up with a 10, 12 race winner season. I think we're going to have less than 10 winners. I know originally we both had a bunch, but the way it's trending out, I don't see that happening now.
I agree with you, and I forgot one thing, and I gotta see what y'all think. Legit, want to see what y'all legit think. Larson's running all three again. Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. What's his shot?
It's a lot
Those
harder to control your fate there. I'll say
Yeah,
that.
yes it is.
Um, he's always been good there. When he was good in there at the Xfinity, that was right after they ground the top of the track though, and it was a
Yep,
highline track.
yep.
I don't know. I'm not so concerned about truck other than, when you race with idiots, you're going to get hit by idiots. So,
Yeah.
it's harder to hide from those guys. My concern, kind of like it was at Homestead, it's not about the cup race or the Xfinity or the truck race. It's how the Xfinity race goes. And, what they do with the PJ1 between races, how it wears between races, I think will be a big factor. Because he's always been good around the top there. Now he did carve up the bottom really well there last fall, but um, so I think it's doable. But I mean, the fact that Kyle Busch has done it twice and nobody else has even gotten close in what 20 years essentially doing it, that's that's pretty
That's the
pretty
closest
hard.
was Larson at Homestead,
Yep.
and I mean, realistic. I mean,
Yeah, he was in shooting distance of it.
yeah,
So
I
I'm
think if
just
oh sorry, I think if anybody can do it, it'll be Larson.
yeah,
But I don't know. We'll see. I'm more worried the Xfinity race than anything else. I don't think the truck race will be a problem for him. Um, but yeah, the Xfinity, the way it's been on these short tracks, Demolition Derby, maybe they calm down and after the Martinsville stuff, but we'll see.
you
but
keep
he's
him
got to
off
get
the
through
apron.
time time first.
That's true. He's pretty dang
and
good.
and was a kid in 30, 34, 38 truck. What's his name?
Riggs, Lane
Riggs.
Yeah,
Riggs,
yeah. He
he's good at
flat
Bristol.
dominated there last fall, so you have to deal with him too.
Yep. So we'll find out just how much that PJ1 played an effect and how fast a truck Spire brings. Because this isn't a place, I mean, it is. This is a place where back in the day, if you had a skill set like Kyle Busch's and you had the right feel, you could go in there and toy with the field. That's how he was able to do it both times. And both times he did it, the data, the SMT wasn't out available to everybody yet. Now all that
Yep.
data is out there and readily available, so everybody can see the lines better and the brake and throttle traces better. So I do think that's partially why, even if no matter who it does it now, it is a much taller mountain to climb, because what makes you special there is hard to keep a secret from anybody. So,
Yeah.
All right, now I'm done. I quit.
Well, I'm done. I gotta be up in 3 hours.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for waiting so late to do this with us, guys. Sorry about the late start. And yeah, so we'll see what the weekend brings. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
All right, you too.
Bye bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.